Disability Presentation, Auditory Processing Disorder by Pamela Ellis. Here's the definition and some characteristics of auditory processing disorder. APD, sometimes called Central Audio Processing Disorder, or CAPD, is a hearing problem which affects how the brain processes spoken words. For school children, it is difficult to understand verbal instructions and to hear properly in a noisy classroom. Hearing ability is adequate, but often children cannot remember or understand auditory information. It is difficult for children to recognize subtle differences in sounds, even when the sounds are loud. Here is a list of symptoms and signs. A child with auditory processing disorder has difficulty processing and remembering language-related tasks, but can recall nonverbal environmental sounds like music. They have difficulty explaining thoughts and ideas. They confuse similar sounding words like celery and salary, belt, built, three and free. They find it difficult focusing on and remembering a verbal presentation. They ignore people, especially if engrossed. They say what a lot, even when they have heard what was said. Important considerations in identifying APD. According to Dr. Terry James Bellis from the American Speech Language Hearing Association, there are many disorders that can affect a person's ability to understand auditory information. APD may coexist with ADHD or other disorders. In those cases, only careful and accurate diagnosis can assist in disentangling the relative effects of each. The actual diagnosis of APD must be made by an audiologist. These individuals often have difficulties with language learning and reading in addition to their auditory deficit. Diagnosing APD. To diagnose APD, the audiologist will administer a series of tests in a sound-treated room. These tests require listeners to attend to a variety of signals and to respond to them via repetition, pushing a button, or in some other way. Other tests that measure the auditory system's physiologic responses to sound may also be administered. Most of the tests of APD require that a child be at least 7 or 8 years of age, because the variability in brain function is so marked in younger children that test interpretation may not be possible. The history of APD. APD was first recognized in the 1950s by audiologist Helmer Michelbust. He noticed children with normal peripheral hearing, but who showed reduced functioning in complex listening situations. In the 1970s and into the 80s, Bob Keith started developing tests to diagnose APD. And by the 1990s, the American Speech Language Hearing Association began developing criteria for APD, definitions, and strategies for management. Prevalence. Approximately 5% of school-age children have some type of auditory processing disorder, according to the National Institute of Health. In children with learning difficulties, the prevalence of auditory processing disorder has been found to be 43%. In addition, around 50% of children with dyslexia also have coexisting auditory processing disorder. The true prevalence of APD is most likely greater, however, since children with APD often go undiagnosed. Testing for APD may include testing for recognition of pitch patterns and duration patterns, tests to assess the ability to recognize speech presented in the presence of noise or competing speakers, and tests to determine whether there is a deficit in how the brain integrates information from the two ears. Instructional strategies for teachers. For in-class instruction, repeat information frequently throughout the lesson. Seat the student near you. Speak clearly and slowly. Use hand signals to indicate when an important point is being made. Use visual tools like a whiteboard or computer to support spoken instruction, and use enhanced classroom acoustics. For classwork, provide a quiet place for the student to work. Don't penalize a student for spelling errors. Provide extra time for testing. Allow a fellow student to help or share notes, and always have short written instructions for tests and classwork. Here are some helpful websites for parents and some helpful websites for teachers. Thank you very much. I hope this was helpful and informational.